Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the Unqualified Film Bros podcast. We are talking about the new Steven Soderbergh movie tonight. And yes, Ben, in the last week, I did learn the proper pronunciation. Steven Soderbergh directs Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett in Black Bag. It is a very sleek, very tight spy thriller. Soderbergh still got it. Not sure he ever lost it. Gentlemen, what'd you think?
Yeah, no, it's very good. Soderbergh doesn't make bad movies. He's always experimenting, but he's a really, really good filmmaker, just as a craft. But it's very clear in this film, and also it's really crazy to how tight it is. Like there's a lot that happens, and it's only an hour and a half. Um, that's a hallmark of excellent storytelling, excellent screenplay, excellent direction. And yeah, I mean every part I thought it was a really interesting premise. And it took turns that I wasn't expecting. Um, yeah, I mean it's very good, very sleek
Yeah, it was very sleek. We've used that.
and
Every single
sexy.
one of us have used the word sleek, and like that's the best way to describe it. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's like an F1 car. It's sexy. It's gonna go real fast, and it's gonna be exciting to watch. That's what you're gonna get with Soderbergh. And it felt a little bit like how some of the Ocean's films unfold. With and some of his other films too, I guess, but specifically came to mind the Ocean's films. And it's like there's always one character, or in the case of the Ocean's movies, several characters who know exactly what's going on and are exactly in on the plan. And in here you have two characters in Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett who are so intimately intertwined that they have such an understanding of each other that this was never a question of who betrayed who. It's how the hell are they going to beat the other people and how they're going to outsmart everybody else. And like they were in on it. Like they knew like it was all
They had
pieced
everything
together.
figured out
Yeah.
from the moment the film began.
Well, no, but
Not
they figured
entirely,
it out
but
real quick.
yeah.
And like the way that it unfolds at towards the end of the film with um what's Michael Fassbender's character? What's
George.
George. Yeah, George. Hey, um kind of explaining it like you would get it in an Ocean's film. It's like, yeah, shit's awesome.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of there for you to figure out too. It's like you
Yeah,
can piece it together.
yeah.
It's something that Soderbergh does really well. Max, you mentioned the Ocean's movies. Logan Lucky, another good example. Um, even something, what was the like the crime thriller that he did during the pandemic? Oh, it's gonna kill me. I should have had this ready before I started talking. Of course, I'm talking about No Sudden Move with Don Cheadle.
Oh
Mm.
yeah,
Um, Soderbergh, he's the master of like the third act explanation of how everything came together, where it's not like I'm telling you everything that happened. It's the character explaining the plot in a way that logically makes sense for them to be doing it at that point in the story. And I think what we get here, as Fassbender explains to his dinner guests how he and Kate Blanchett's character figured it all out, is another prime example of that, where it makes sense logically for the story for George and Catherine to tell all their coworkers that they solved the case. They figured out what was going on, right?
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a little more sexy and sleek than that, but
Well, of course, my explanations on this podcast have never been known to be sexy or sleek.
I like that nobody really knows what's going to happen, including the audience. So it's like they're all
Yeah.
invited there, but you don't know if they've sold it. You don't know what's going to happen. I think that's
I think the polygraph sequence, which is probably my favorite scene in the movie, when everyone's going through the polygraphs, um, does a really good job of leading the audience down a bunch of different avenues of what might be the case, who might be lying. Um, and the way that it's edited with each character's narrative sort of intercut with each other. Really, really quick cuts in that sequence too, which I really liked. It plays up the sort of fog the audience is kept in of there's so much going on right now that we can't hope to identify the answer until it's told to us in the third act. And I think that's a really, really clever choice by Soderbergh to have a sequence like that to present the audience with a lot of information that will be essential to the end of the film, but doesn't give the answer away.
I don't know. You could probably figure it out. I kind of figured it out after the guy came back and said, "Yeah, actually, this alias, there were tons of them. It's like it's such a sloppy mistake by me. They used it like 40 or 50 times. It's probably when his character really figured it out too. But yeah, I think he gives enough.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's not really the most interesting part of the film, the reveal. It's like the way each of the characters represents stagecraft on the geopolitical scene, right? And like what relationships look like and how they can topple um whatever Severus. Like it could potentially be devastating if one of these people has a bad day. Um, like, and that's kind of what it is like.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably more dramatic than like most day to day at a place like
Right.
that. Um, yeah, it's a very interesting like juxtaposition between like loyalty in a relationship and loyalty in friendship, loyalty to a company, loyalty to your country, um, and
But
that
all
theme
of
of
those elements are playing off each other. It's not each one specifically like on its own.
no, no, I mean it's the intertwining of it, but also just like comparing how they treat each thing.
Right.
Some people
And
are much more willing to not be loyal in their relationships, as we see, but are loyal to their country and loyal to their people at least.
it's priorities.
Yeah,
Which aspect of your self you consider the most worth preserving.
I think it's an interesting like commentary on relationships that George and Catherine have the best relationship there. That's because they kind of trust each other completely. I mean, even not in a spy world, that is what makes it. I think it's a smart ploy to have like the black bag. It's like you can do whatever you want. They even introduced that in the very first moment. It's like it's so easy to cheat in our line of work. And George is like, it's actually pretty easy for me. Or, he just doesn't cheat. He's very loyal. That comes from like we get the backstory about his father. But I think that is the hallmark of a good relationship. Even aside from that, I think it's a clever way to look at like relationships plus with the thriller aspect. But the themes there are like true. You got the guy that has a terrible relationship with his girlfriend. He stabs her with a steak knife. She's, hysteric. It's some of these people are really, really not made for each other. And then you get Catherine and George, who just they don't even like say things to each other in the film. It's like it's understood between them.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I absolutely agree that this movie is as much a spy thriller as it is a commentary on relationships. And I think what you touched on, Ben, just now is exactly right. The fact that Catherine and George have this mutual understanding where the audience can fill in the blanks when they don't say everything in each scene and each interaction. It really adds a truly special level of depth to their characters where these feel like real people, right? Like we're not seeing a very surface level relationship that you might find in
Well, yeah,
like like a Bond movie. Obviously,
yeah.
some of the
Well,
Daniel Craig movies have a little bit more
uh,
depth to their relationships, but you look at the Connery movies, there's no relationships in those films that
I
compare
don't
with
know, man.
this.
I think you've digressed here because the recent Bond movies had a heavy, heavy dose of
That's why I
relationships.
said not the Daniel Craig movies, but going back to like Connery era.
Even the previous ones on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Bond goes crazy because his wife is killed. Sorry, spoilers. Um, I yeah, I mean, they don't really feel like real people. It's like they have real problems, but that it's still
I don't know.
sleek. It's dramatic. It's very much a presentation of people.
Like Kate Blanchett should not be a fucking A-lister spy looking in an office job when she's going to the office every day. Like she looks
Yeah,
like a movie star every time she wakes up. Like, come on.
yeah. All these people are supposed to be nerds in real life, but
All right, let me rephrase. The world is very surface level, but the
I
relationships are authentic.
I I guess the themes, like
The themes, yeah.
nothing here is real. Like that's what I wanted to convey. It's a dramatization. It's a movie, but yeah, I mean there's plenty of other movies that have a much more like you know more grounded look at relationships. Even like Sean Baker's stuff. We're going to talk about that soon.
Yeah, we
Um,
are in a couple weeks.
but yeah, I mean it's still sleek. It's still meant to be like these people are not acting like real people. They're acting like archetypes, they're ideals. And the problems that they have are real, the relationship issues that they have are real. But I wouldn't say that anything here is real. Like this is a kind of Bond situation. Is why I thought that was a strange
Okay, fair enough.
path to take.
What did you guys think of the supporting cast here? Because we talked a lot about Fassbender and Blanchett, but it's a small cast, but
Yeah.
everybody's playing up to 10 on this.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good. It's not like there's crazy acting needed in this movie.
No.
Um, but yeah, they all do a good job. This is much more about like the direction and the story, I would say. And the actors obviously play a part and they do a good job at what, they're
Right.
asked to do.
They elevate the words on the page. And I think that's
Oh,
what you
yeah.
really look for in a screenplay like this. Is actors who can do that.
But yeah, I think it's much more like the direction I think is really smart. Um, the shots, they use the editing. All of Soderbergh's movies
That
have really, really good editing.
that long take for the opening scene took my fucking breath away. That was so good.
But yeah, you watch the film and it's like everything is really entertaining. Like the way that he's doing things, nothing is bland. Whereas a lot of movie makers will just shoot, be like, all right, story's cool. We got Michael Fassbender over there, but not really think about how to use the camera. Soderbergh's always been thinking about filmmaking from an artistic perspective. It's one of the things I really appreciate about him. Um, and the
And it
soundtrack.
shows throughout his
He's always
work.
got cool soundtracks. I mean, it's really bizarre. It's really cool. It's, you know, it fits the vibe, but it's not something that, you would hear in another like thriller, noir. I mean, this is like in the middle because of the relationship stuff to me. It's like a thriller with noir dressing. At its premise, it is this like spy thriller, but it's also got all of the like relationship intrigue. All these people, who are they? But yeah, I think everything is going really well.
But it's all so tight. right? We talked about the short run time where everything has to be exactly perfect in what, 93 minutes? It's
Something like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
I feel like this movie does itself a service, and obviously we've talked about Soderbergh being a master of his craft by telling his story in whatever time he needs to. Um,
Well,
but
I
this
mean, some
film,
of his stuff was longer. I saw an interview and he
yeah,
just said, "Yeah, I've been getting better at making things tighter." So,
good. It's good of him as a creator and as an artist to acknowledge that about himself.
well,
Like there
some
are
things
some,
don't need that much time. Some things do.
right, you know, I think I mentioned Logan Lucky. That's a buck 50. It needs a buck 50. The Ocean's movies sit around 2 hours each. Those are a little bit
Yeah.
more involved. They're a little bit more spread out. But yeah, I think this movie, it would have been a disservice to try to add more to it. I think it was like if you're filling up a glass of water, it reached the brim.
Yeah,
Like
and
it
it's
wasn't
also it's a isolated story. I mean, there's twists and turns, but it's like for the most part, it involves very few characters. Um, the principal ones
Take
being
place
that,
within like 8 days.
yeah, it takes place very
I
short
did
period.
like the stylized title cards for each day. That
Hmm.
was fun.
And also, it takes place like for the most part, we follow George. We follow some other characters. I think we see like Catherine and Freddie outside, but for the most part, we're just watching George. So, you know, anything we glean is through him. It's a lot easier to make that, 1 hour and 30 minutes rather than
Well,
like having two perspectives and stuff.
it's interesting to have the film resolve with George and Catherine as sort of co-protagonists when for the first two acts of the movie we're led to believe that George is almost putting on an act around Catherine because he might suspect that she is the one who released Severus. And I think the pull back of the curtain on that George never really suspected Catherine because it was it was one of the others. They both knew that it was one of the others for most of the film. Um, from a narrative standpoint, I think that's a really really well done storytelling technique to
Hmm.
to have us be led to believe Catherine might be a suspect for most of the film. Because George is our eyes. He is our lens into the film from the very beginning. As soon as he's the
Well,
one
yeah, but
walking through that one continuous take.
we're still an observer, right? Because we don't have that information to ourselves. We are still watching George, so it's a clever restriction of knowledge. It's like we follow this guy, but we don't actually know all the stuff that he does or he
Right.
knows. Um, but yeah, I agree. I think it pushes the mystery a little bit further, um, and also fits with the theme of like his loyalty. We're questioning the entire time, but he is not. We have the same information sort of at that point. It's like technically I mean, he has these different, ideas. It's like, oh, that movie stuff, that's kind of lazy. But he's still discovering this. We're still getting the same information. It's just he has a different perspective.
And he kind of says that, like the secret
Yeah.
to the relationship isn't what they are able to separate from their personal lives. It's not separating them. And
Hmm.
that's how they get that trust. That's why they're able to do what they do.
Right. And the whole nature of their black bag um, sort of arrangement, where if one of them does something for work and they don't want the other to fully know about it, they say, "Oh, it's in the black bag."
Well, it's
And
all of them are that. That's the job.
still, it's a say no more sort of. I'll leave you be on my line of questioning.
Well, no, I think
Uh,
it's clever because it I mean, the audience doesn't really understand. They understand the premise of Black Bag, and the other people also are shown cheating and doing, duplicitous things with the premise of Black Bag. And so when she says that, it's like the audience, has this supposition that like that, yeah, it's her. Everything is leading to her, and the entire time
She's
he doesn't
withholding
doesn't believe
guilt.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, it's very clever, but it's not just for them. I think that's the best part. Is like that's just the line
Right.
of work, and that all they invite these other couples in that have terrible situations. They don't trust each other at all.
Yeah, the inclusion of a therapist though was great in that
Yeah.
group too. Like the implications of that like between the confidentiality stuff, like that's really nice.
I mean, the
Yeah, and
level
she's
of
incredibly involved.
yeah, I mean, just Max, you're absolutely right. The level of psychological understanding that this character has compared with the rest, like she can read people better, or so she thinks, than everyone else. And everyone's got something to hide, but the way that each character's sort of side of the story is presented, you get some unreliable narrators, and the psychiatrist is happens to be one of them.
And she's immediately undermined in the first interaction she has with Catherine. Like Catherine immediately calls out her, I guess at that point, well, causes, I don't know. She has like a crisis of faith or something, in the seat and rattles her almost immediately when they sit down for the first time together. So there's like all these different power dynamics at play at every single level from the very beginning.
Yeah, but I think it emphasized like the trust between George and Catherine and the distrust that they have towards everyone else.
Everybody
It's like
else.
they love each other and everyone else just talks about them like, yeah, those guys are kind of weird.
Right, though, but it's that relationship dynamic that ultimately proves to be one, the strongest, and two, the one that figures everything out.
Yeah, I mean, I never saw this as like a happy end. They're kind of like
It's
a
not a,
power couple, you
yeah,
know. They're kind of horrible people themselves because they distrust other people. It's just it
that's the
makes
line of work,
it
Benjamin.
work. Um, yeah, maybe. I
Oh, yeah,
choose to interpret it differently.
the way that these six characters who are clearly so involved in each other's lives,
Again, they know each other has nothing to do with whatever this is, and they both tell each other, "I will kill for you."
right,
You know?
but George says it to Catherine at the beginning, and Catherine says it to George at the end. And that placement of each side of that, I think, is very deliberate. One, in the audience belief that Catherine might be a suspect for most of the film,
But yeah, they
but
switch it
also
up
just
because at that point George is messed up.
yeah.
But
But just
the premise is the same. It's like they will do anything for the other person. So, and they tell, George says that as much throughout the entire film. It's like, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, but yeah, I don't think we're meant to believe it. Like this is healthy per se. It works for them, but
yeah.
I don't know.
But there are so many unhealthy relationships, and Max, you touched on this a little bit with Naomi Harris's character, um, where these characters are so involved in each other's lives professionally and personally, intimately in some cases, where the lines really get blurred, and trust outside of George and Catherine really comes into question. And I think that is a hallmark of a compelling mystery thriller.
Yeah, and I think it does good things to lead people on to suspect, like Freddie and the therapist sends for what's his name, Jimmy, like kicks him out. It's the coldest breakup you'll ever see. And we don't get the reasoning why until later. And it's like at that point you're like, wow, is this person using them? Is she the one? Everyone has like a moment like that where it's like you suspect them.
And I think that that moment at the second dinner party when Regé John Page grabs the gun off the table and fires the blanks, and then Kate Blanchett goes, "The game was who grabs the gun first." Like that's the drop of the hat moment where you realize that Catherine and George have known the whole time, or not the whole time, but they have set up this dinner party with a full understanding of everything that's
Yeah, I mean
happened.
they're smart. They're conniving son of a bitches.
Like, yeah, they know that they're the smartest ones in the room. Like that's part of it too, is like they and the way that they act, right? Like I said earlier, she's a movie star every time she walks on the screen. Um, and Michael Fassbender is this buttoned up culinary nerd who can read people like it's nobody's business and
I want to try his cooking.
just wants to have his starched white shirts be perfectly clean. Like they know exactly who they like they are so focused on getting the job done that it's like, yeah, they love each other, but like the job is still the job. And they know that they're good at it and they know that they're like the best.
Also, it was a total fucking lock that when he said, "I need to go change," when he gets the wine or the sauce or whatever it was on the white shirt, total fucking lock that it was going to be a black turtleneck.
Yeah,
That was a
Steve Jobs.
guarantee. Yeah, Black Bag is a whole heck of a lot of fun. I think we've said pretty much all we can about it at this point. We all
Yeah, it's
wholeheartedly
something to
recommend it.
enjoy. You gotta experience it.
Um, it is probably in a very limited run in theaters. We're recording this at a point where it's only been out for 5 days. We're already concerned that it will leave theaters by
Yeah,
next week.
it's
Short
gonna get
theatrical windows are unfortunately becoming a huge part of the movie release system.
they hate money.
Hopefully,
That's all it is. They
hopefully
hate
that can
money.
change. They do hate money. Ben has had a very positive update today on the Coyote
Not
versus
until it's
Acme.
sold. Not until it's sold.
Um,
Until they sell it, I'm
there
not
are there
believing
are
the word.
talks of a multi-million dollar deal.
Yeah, well, there were talks about Tom Brady coming to the Dolphins too. Look how that ended up.
Okay, you need to let that go.
Hey,
You have Zach
it's
Wilson
still
as your backup
Florida.
now.
I didn't want Tom Brady, but we lost a pick. We lost a first round pick because of fucking tampering.
Well, you shouldn't have tampered. Anyway, yeah, Black Bag. It's early. This is a contender for me right now as one of the best movies of the year. Certainly so far, it's my favorite. Um, Again, we've only
It'll
done a
be
few
tough
movies from this
slates.
year, but yeah,
House of
Soderbergh.
Nights not looking like it though.
Nope.
Soderbergh's a goddamn prince, and he's good at making movies. You should see as many of his films as you can. In the meantime, check out Black Bag while it is still in theaters. Support non-IP projects at movie theaters. This is a very original, very fun story. It only takes 93 minutes of your time. Go check it out. We will be back next week. We're going to meet Nathan Kane, who can't feel pain in Novocaine. Looking forward to that. A little action, comedy action. So check out Black Bag, check out Novocaine. We will see you next week. Have a good night.
Good night.